And I came home one day and there was a bunch of bags packed at the door, and it was my girlfriend who was leaving. She said I wasn't going anywhere in life, and so she left. And this happened 2 more times over the course of a few years. I wanted to get out of the world of the 9 to 5 delivering pizza, so I saw this ad in Craigslist and it said, make $50,000 a year, which back then was a lot of money. I was absolutely terrified. I was super nervous.
So excited for today's guest because before we even hopped on, we talked about what we should talk about and what we shouldn't talk about. And this episode might be a little bit controversial. However, I'm excited to get into everything today. My special guest is Dan Henry, 8-figure entrepreneur, founder of GetClients.com, best-selling author. I believe you've written 2 or 3 books.
Three
books now. And one thing that I really resonate with your story is you say, I went from a pizza boy to a $30 million empire. And that's crazy to me, like to go from there to there. So I guess let's start off with your background, your zero to hero story, where you started and how you went from pizza boy to $30 million empire.
Well, I started off like most people that live in Florida, staying up till 2 a.m., smoking weed, wasting my life, running around with low-quality people, girlfriends that steal your gun and fire it off into the air when they're angry. Florida life. And I delivered pizza for 7 years because I just didn't think I was really destined for more until there was a point where I lived in Chicago, the Chicagoland area, and I came home one day and there was a bunch of bags packed at the door, and it was my girlfriend who was leaving. And, she said I wasn't going anywhere in life, and so she left. And this happened 2 more times over the course of a few years. And one day I just decided that they were kind of right, and that I did need to make something of myself, and that I also needed to find a higher quality woman as well. And so I really dive deep. And I remembered when I worked at this, I got a job. Billy Mays, the OxyClean guy, he died, but he was the pitchman, right? I wanted to get out of the world of the 9 to 5 delivering pizza. So I saw this ad in Craigslist and it said, make $50,000 a year, which back then was a lot of money. Make $50,000 a year as a sales rep. And so I answer it, and I didn't have a ton of experience with sales, but I answered it and I got the job. They flew me up to New Jersey and they taught me how to pitch this set of cookware, right? And I remember the very first day that I got up to the booth and I was absolutely terrified. I was super nervous. I just was falling apart. And I said to my manager, and my manager was the guy that trained Billy Mays. I said, I don't think I can do this. And he the people, the mentors in my life have never been nice to me. They've always been very harsh, and it's always what I needed, because I've never really got anything of value out of somebody who was nice to me. I've always got value out of somebody who was direct with me. And they said, listen, Dan, stop being a bitch. There's a sheet of paper that we've spent millions of dollars perfecting. If you say these words, people will buy. Shut up and say the words. I went, okay. I got up there and I repeated the words that I was taught. And sure enough, a bunch of people bought. I made $1,500 that day in sales commissions.
Wow.
From that point on, I realized one very simple thing, that words matter. And that there's a lie. Like, most people don't realize this, but the entirety of America, society, everything that you know is complete lie. It's crap. It's all fabricated to make you play the game, right? And to keep you from knowing the rules of the game so you can't win the game. That is why you don't learn anything about money in school. And that's also why there are school. Do you know why there's school bells in school? Do you know why? During the Industrial Revolution, they needed more factory workers. So they had this idea to put bells in schools. Why? To train children, to condition them to come when the bell is rang. Come to class when the bell is rang. What happens when the bell rings? in a factory. You go to the assembly line. They were conditioning and training them. John D. Rockefeller, who founded and funded the General Board of Education, said, I am not in the business of making a nation of thinkers. I am in the nation of making a business of workers. School was and
Wow.
always will be designed to make your children poor, make them think poor, and make sure they don't understand the rules of the game so they can't win the game. And when I started to understand the rules of the game, I understood one very simple fact, that hard work does not make you successful. That is a lie. It's because, and it's definitely a lie, because look at all the hard workers in the world. They don't make hardly anything. The guy that says, I have been a brick, I have 40 years experience laying brick. No, you don't, sir. It takes 2 weeks to learn how to lay brick. You have 40 years experience settling for laying brick. The guy that actually made the money on that deal, he was a communicator. He went out and he convinced a group of people to give him their money so he could go out and hire you, the bricklayer, to build a building, which then he could then sell, make millions. And how did he do it? How did he get the investors? How did he get the people to buy the building? How did he do that? He did it with his mouth. You worked with your hands. He worked with his mouth. The people that get paid the most, they work with their mouth. They're communicators. They're actors. They're musicians. They're speakers. They're politicians. If you learn how to use this, you'll never have to use this. And that was the fundamental lesson I learned. And from there, I took that and I built businesses and I read hundreds of books and I created a multi-million-dollar income stream without using this, by using and mastering this.
Persuasion, influence, communication. I love that. So on your path, you go from pizza boy to $30 million empire. What were some habits that you had to get rid of or even incorporate in order to get to that next level of success? Because the pizza boy is a completely different person than the person who's running a $30 million empire. Maybe they aren't. But who did you have to essentially become? What habits did you have to completely get rid of? And what stuff did you have to add in?
Well, the habits, habits are a result of what you choose to do with your time and who you choose to allow to have your time, right? So if you hang out with people who are alcoholics, you're going to have the habit of drinking because you're just going to become those people. If you date a bunch of girls who have OnlyFans sites and who dress like strippers when they walk down the street, then you're going to have a toxic relationship. Those people are toxic. And so you're going to have toxic habits in your relationships. If you, hang out with people who don't have goals, then you're going to spend time doing things that don't matter. You're going to stay up till 2 a.m. and you're going to be playing video games instead of reading books to build a future. And so what I would recommend for anybody, especially if you're in your 20s or even if you're a teenager, is don't do what most people who are young do. And most people who are young, they do a free-for-all dopamine festival, okay? Because when you're young, you got abs for no reason because you got this amazing metabolism and you're young. And so you want to go out and you want to have fun. You want to experience dopamine. You want to be happy. And the truth is that is the time to not have fun because you have the most amount of time to learn skills that will make you rich for the rest of your life. And so if you don't hang out with those friends, if you don't party, if you don't do those things, and instead you spend those early years learning a skill, then you can really live it up in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. But if you wait until your 30s, now life is going to smack you in the face. You're going to have all these responsibilities, and it's going to be way harder for you to learn those skills because you're not going to have time. You're going to have your brain is going to be filled up with responsibilities and pressure and paying bills and dealing with all this stuff. And you're going to get stuck in the loop. And TV, the internet, culture is all designed to keep you distracted. It's designed to keep you having fun in your 20s. All the shows you watch, they depict people constantly having fun in their 20s. And what's going to happen here is you're going to experience a slice, just a teeny tiny scratch at the surface of what you would consider fun. But if you double down and you grind in your 20s, those are the guys that are on yachts in their 30s. Those are the guys, you know what I'm saying? Those are the guys that really live it up because they resisted the temptation to go on a dopamine binge in your 20s. They resisted the temptation to party, and instead they made progress, and then they can live it up for the rest of their life. And if you do that, you will be the most boring person to all your friends. They will hate you. But in 10 years, they'll still be an assistant manager at Applebee's, and you'll be a millionaire. And that's my
I love
advice.
that. I love that. So as you started to grow, what were some books, mentors that you followed that like made a world of a difference? And I'm sure it's not just technical stuff. It was more deeper identity stuff. So what were some things that people can take that they can start reading today, or action steps they can take to start going on that route to become that person?
Well, what I would recommend is decide what you want to do and then develop the skills to do it. So that's going to tell you what books to read. For me, I needed to know how to communicate and sell and market. So I read marketing books. I read sales books. I read one book that a lot of people hate is the 48 Laws of Power, because it shows you the ways that dictators uh, rose to power. And many of those things are through manipulation. But here's the truth about this is a good tactic. There's no such thing as a good or bad tactic. There's good or bad intention. When you learn a
Mm,
tactic, you can use that for good or you can use it for bad. Many people don't know this, but Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Hitler, Obama, Trump, all these people use the same exact speech tactics. They just use them with different intent. And so, one thing I will say is probably the best thing you can do for yourself is find someone you don't like, you don't agree with, you don't resonate with, and learn from them, study from them. Because even if you hate something, even if you like, imagine you read the 48 Laws of Power, you start reading it, and then you stop, right? Because you're like, oh, that's offensive. Well, what happens when somebody rises to power, does those things, and you can't recognize it because you shut yourself off from it? At the very least, you can recognize the threat. And so for me, uh, you can just look at the top, like, 48 Laws of Power, 4 Hour Work Week, um, any Robert Cialdini book, Persuasion, Influence, all that. But the truth is, do not choose based on what you resonate with and who you like, or if you find them to be evil or good, because
mm,
you can learn from them, study them, and use those things, the understanding of those things, with a different intent. And so that's what I recommend.
right. So making sure that you remove uh, your own personal opinions out of it, and you humble yourself essentially to go towards whatever you can learn from somebody, regardless of whether you like them or not.
Humbling yourself is a great way to learn, but it needs to go beyond that. You need to completely separate your personal opinion from it's kind of like, you ever watch these UFC commentators? You'll see Daniel Cormier, who had a crazy rivalry with John Jones. I mean, they were literally threatening to kill each other. They were threatening each other's families. It was nasty. And uh, when John Jones fights and Daniel Cormier comments on his fights as a announcer, he doesn't sit there and talk about how he thinks John Jones is a piece of crap, like he said 10,000 times. He commentates on the fight as a commentator. He removes his bias and he calls the fight properly. And
Mm,
that same separation of mind is a key thing that you need to do to be a strong man and to be a successful man. You have to be able to separate your personal views from your ability to receive, process, and use information.
I love that. So how important is this? And this is just kind of a side note, but how important is it to start to become a healthy person on this journey? Because I remember I was watching some of your content a while back about how you started to do 10K steps a day,
Mhm.
to start, losing weight. What went to that decision? How come most entrepreneurs who go on this journey start to become unhealthy, whether it's of mind or of body? And how can they start making better decisions to be a fully integrated person?
Well, here's why you should go to the gym and diet if you want to be successful. See, most people who have a normal 9 to 5 job and then they go into something like online entrepreneurship, internet money, they struggle because they think their life is hard. They think they have a high tolerance for pain, but the truth is they have almost zero tolerance for pain. I had an unfair advantage in that I owned 2 restaurants. I had a cotton candy business. I had an airbrush tattoo business. I traveled around with a carnival at one point. I had a lot of brick and mortar businesses where I had to deal with a lot of BS. I had to deal with bartenders who didn't open the bar because their boyfriends got mad at them or just something stupid and irrelevant. And so and I had to deal with one time I refused to give a police officer a free drink because I don't give free stuff. Sorry, you're going to pay like everybody else. And as a result, they got mad at me and they would come in and they'd shut my bar down saying that the music was too loud, even though you could barely hear it. And they would mess
Wow.
with me and I had to deal with that. And so my pain tolerance was extremely high. So when I went to make money online and I'm dealing with relatively, because everything's relative, small problems, I was like, that's not a problem. Or when I asked for a sale and I got 10, 15, 20, 30 no's, I was like, that's not a problem. I'll just wait till the yes, and then I'll figure out why I got the yes. And the next thing you know, I only got to wait for 10 no's to get a yes. And the next thing you know, I only got to wait for 5 no's to get a yes. And so the truth is that most people do not have a high tolerance for BS. And if you're a 9-to-5 employee, I'm sorry, but Sarah in HR who's annoying, that's not a real problem. Okay. That's not a real problem. You have no problems. The guy running the business who every day wonders if he can pay you, and if he makes one wrong decision, you're screwed, he's screwed, and he loses everything, and the IRS takes that guy is dealing with BS. That guy has a high pain tolerance. So what do you do? What do you do if you don't have a high pain tolerance and you want to be successful, which is the thing that is required? You have to artificially create a high pain tolerance by injecting pain in your life. You have to go to the gym. You have to get up at 5 a.m. You have to eat good, even if you could eat bad. I don't care if you have a good metabolism or not. Put down the cupcake, fatty. Okay? Why? Because it sucks to not eat a cupcake. So make your life suck so that you can increase your pain tolerance, so that you are used to dealing with these things so you can deal with real problems. Plus, if you think about it, the idea to diet and exercise is you have to have 3 things to get jacked in the gym. You have to have focus, you have to have delayed gratification, and you have to be willing to look bad in order to look good. Period. And those are 3 things that will give, if you have those 3 traits, you can be successful at anything in life. If you can focus, okay? If you can be consistent and be willing to look bad while you look good, and if you can delay gratification, you will be successful. Well, what's the easiest way to practice that? Going to the gym. Every day, consistency. Focusing on your workout, not playing on your stupid phone and sitting there taking up the leg press machine on your phone while people who actually want to lift are waiting on you, okay? And delayed gratification. Being willing to look fat, look out of shape while everybody else is jacked for 6 months or a year, and then all of a sudden you're one of the jacked guys. If you can do those 3 things, the easiest way to practice those 3 traits of a successful person is in the gym. And then when you go to build a business, you can focus because you're practiced focusing. You can delay gratification because you just did it in the gym, and you can be consistent because you just did it in the gym. And those 3 things will grow any business, make anyone successful.
I love that. How important do you think environment is within success? Because I also remember you moved to California, I believe,
No, I would never move to California.
or
California
you were
is,
talking shit
I'd
about
rather move to
California.
North Korea than California. I do not go to the land of blue hair. So
I think you were talking shit about California then.
I'm from Florida, bro. We do not like Californians, or well,
Why don't
we don't like
Floridians like
California.
why don't they like California?
Well,
I'm Canadian, so I'm ignorant to this stuff.
so California is the most ridiculous state. They're the most liberal state. They have the most people with blue hair and pronouns and 10,000 genders. They're so happy. The taxes are incredibly high. And in Florida, we're more real. We're more raw. We like freedom. We don't walk around with 17 masks on while stuffing our face with McDonald's and not going to the gym. Almost everybody in Florida goes to the gym. We like to be free. We like to do what we want. We don't like people telling what we do. We don't have a state income tax. And while we do have some people with blue hair, it's definitely not as much as California. And so we
Mm.
just culturally don't like, I would never want to go to California. Maybe Orange County, because it's like a mini Florida in California. But for the most part, I do not like the culture of California, which you're Canadian. So I mean, isn't that don't you have that kind of same vibe there? Don't you go to jail if you accidentally call a dude with long hair a dude when he clearly has a penis? Like, is that? I
Yeah,
mean, yeah.
hate. It's hate speech now. I
So
mean,
it's hate speech to accurately call someone what they are. That's interesting.
what they are, yeah.
Okay.
It's crazy because it feels more like a dictatorship. You know, I'm from Iran, so I know what a dictatorship actually looks like. And when they've done stuff here in Canada, like when they rolled out the mandates for the vaccines and they told people you can't have a job or even go to public places without a vaccine, I was like, this is very similar to what they would probably do back home. Like this is dictatorship principles 101.
Well, that's very similar to
Um,
California, and that's why I, as a Floridian, do not like it.
where do you think shit went wrong? What do you think happened in the world that all of a sudden people started going blue hair and 50 different genders and all of
Well, I'll
this
tell
stuff?
you why. At the top, there is an elite group of people who make the rules of the game. Back in the day, there were very rich, hundreds of years ago, there were very rich families. And the way they hoarded the wealth was they did two things. Number one, they distracted the people with irrelevant BS to occupy their minds. And number two, they restricted their access to education around money. Because if you don't know the
Mm,
rules of the game, you can't win the game. And so I truly believe that the people at the top, they don't believe in the blue hair stuff. They don't believe in 10,000 genders. They don't believe in pronouns. They're way smarter than that. They just want you to believe in it, fight about it, and talk about it so you don't have time to learn the rules of the game, so you don't win the game, so they keep all the winnings. That's what I truly believe. It's just a distraction. It's just created to make you not win and instead fight over something as silly, horrendously stupid as what is a girl, what is a boy, which is literally the most ridiculous possible conversation you can have, but yet we have it every day. Why? So that we don't have the real conversations that make us win. It's meant to keep us down so that the guys at the top can stay at the top and we stay at the bottom.
why do you think now? Like,
It's
I
not
feel
now.
like this.
It's always been that way. It's just right now it happens to be blue hair and pronouns. Tomorrow it'll be something else
Mm,
ridiculous. Okay. For a minute it was like the Kardashians. It's just they come up with a ridiculous thing. We talk about it and then we get bored with it. And so they're like, all right, let's come up with another ridiculous thing. And sometimes they score and we talk about it for a long time. So that's it, man. I don't believe anybody who really pushes that agenda believes in that agenda because they're too smart to actually believe that there's more than two genders. It's BS meant to keep you poor.
so it's just different forms that happen. Like right now, it's going to be the blue hair wave, and then it's going to be something else after that, and something else after that.
Oh
But
yeah,
it's the same play.
absolutely. And it'll get
Yeah.
more ridiculous and more ridiculous. If you've ever seen the movie Idiocracy, that movie became prophetic.
Mm. I gotta watch it. I haven't seen it.
It's
So
a movie about how the world becomes so stupid and ignorant that everyone's a complete idiot, and they can't like machines and all kinds of stuff does everything for them. They live in this society where it's just broken down because everybody's a total moron, and it really
wow.
kind of sounds like how life is today.
Yeah, I think I was talking to my friend about this. I was like, how are people not seeing what's going on in the world? Like this all seems like everything is a play. Like right now there's the whole new virus that's going on in China that's coming out and the whole like Middle East situation. How are people not seeing that this is just to divide everybody, especially with the whole like conflict right now with Palestine, Israel? It's like there's constant division everywhere.
Well, it's because most people grow up and they're conditioned when they're in school. And school's the worst place you could send your children. It's literally school is the worst place you could send your children. Why? Because you're sending them to a poor camp. School is designed to keep you poor. I mean, think about this for a second. Why do they ask you to raise your hand to go to the bathroom? It's not about respect. It's about conditioning you to be compliant. Why is there school bells? Because
Mm.
when the school bell rings, you go to school. When the assembly line, or when the bell rings at the factory, you go to the assembly line. If you really break it down, you will find every little teeny tiny aspect of school, from raising your hand to think about this. Think about a phone 30 years ago. What did it look like? It looked nothing like this. Think about a computer. Think about cars. But now think about a school classroom. They look literally the same as they did 100 years ago. Why? Because schools are meticulously designed to teach you how to make other people rich, to teach you how to stay poor, to teach you how to be an employee, because that's how the economy survives. The economy survives on employees, not entrepreneurs.
Mm.
Literally, John D. Rockefeller said, I am not in the business of making a nation of thinkers. I'm in the business of making a nation of workers. So when you send your children to school, when you go to school, you are being taught to be a worker, which is so hard. Why it's so hard for people to become rich, for people to become wealthy. Okay. That's why. I mean, if I were to hold up, I did this one time and we had millions of views on it. I wish I had my bag with me. But if I hold up a backpack and I say, would you buy this backpack for $1,000? Most people would say no. But see, poor people say no because they're trained to say no. That's what keeps them poor. A rich person would say, what's inside? And then if I open up the
Mm.
bag and there's $100,000 inside, well, now they know, ooh, I stand to lose $99,000. Here's $1,000. I'll take it. Poor people worry about what things cost. Rich people think about what it costs if they don't buy it. And that's how they make their decision.
Wow.
But they don't teach you that in school. Play it safe. That's a pipe dream, kids. Why? They want to keep you poor. So the reason why we don't recognize all these things as distractions is because we're taught from birth, and our parents are taught from birth, and their parents are taught from birth to be a mindless drone. But when you break free of that, when you actually start to learn the rules of the game, you can win the game.
Mm. Do you think there's ever a future where nobody has to, the mass people don't have to just be workers? Everybody can start working on creative things and just be like, AI takes care of everything for everybody. Everybody's got their stuff handled and we can all just be creatives.
I don't think so. I think that I think in the evolution of AI, you will get to AI will decide to kill us all before they'll decide to give us in a utopia.
Wow.
I don't think, or I think someone will use AI in a bad way. Elon Musk talks about it a lot. He says that AI is very dangerous because somebody at some point is going to use AI to do something terrible, and there's nothing we're going to be able to do about it. And I think that'll happen far before AI creates a utopia.
Interesting. So you think if AI had the choice on its own, let's say there was no external human output, they would choose to kill humans rather than just make us better?
I think it's highly possible that AI would determine that human beings are a threat and would not ever have the capacity to live in harmony, and therefore the only logical choice would be to eliminate them. Um,
Wow.
I don't know if that's accurate or true, but I don't think it matters. I think it doesn't matter because I think someone will use AI to do something terrible before that even happens, and that'll be the end of us all. But no reason not to get rich in the meantime. I don't want to die
Yeah,
poor.
might as well get fair. What do you think about the Middle East situation? I know we talked about this before we hopped on the call, and you were like, I don't know if I want to talk about this, but I see you posting about it regularly on your stories.
Well,
What do you think is going on there?
I'll tell you this when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I look at the internet. I don't see any Muslims celebrating the death of Israelis. They will
Mm.
tell you that they do, but I don't see it. However, I see a ton of pro-Israel people celebrating the death of Muslims. And you could go 6 ways a Sunday, dive in every possible category of who owns the land, was it rightfully given to Israel by the UK, is Israel oppressing Palestine, are they this, that, Was it self-defense? Was it not self-defense? Is it real? Is it not real? Is it propaganda? Is it not propaganda? What is true? What is not true? You could go all into that. But at the end of the day, the sentiment really tells you what's going on. One group of people is asking for liberation, and they're not celebrating the death. And I'm sure there are a few, but overall, they're just saying, leave us alone, stop killing us. And the other side is celebrating it. That should tell you most of what you need to know.
Yeah. I think for me, especially as someone who has Jewish background, I look at this and I go, how come we didn't learn from Nazis? Like, this is the exact same thing that's happening.
Yeah,
Like,
I saw a image the other day where they showed a mass grave from the Holocaust, and then they showed a mass grave of Palestinians, and it literally was literally the same picture almost. And I think that I'll tell you this. I'll play both sides here for a second, and I do know that a lot of Muslims. I have a lot of Muslim friends, and I always encourage them not to promote what Hamas allegedly did. And I say allegedly because the day it happened or the week that it happened, they did all these things. They beheaded babies. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, no, they didn't behead babies. That actually wasn't true. Sorry. Well, they have a tunnel where they do all these things. Oh, wait a minute. That tunnel is actually in Sweden. It's not in Israel. So that didn't happen. Well, and all these things start to whittle down. And a month and a half later, that day, October 7th, I believe, went from this happened down to this happened. And this is still terrible. And we should not condone it because, Islam, I don't believe there's anything in Islam that says you're supposed to take innocent civilians as hostages and you're supposed to kill civilians. I don't think there's anything that says that. But the point is, if they said this, and this was the justification to kill 8,000 Palestinian children, and now a month and a half later it's this, what's it going to be in 6 months? I'm not saying it didn't happen, but what we know about what happened could radically change in the next 6 months to the point where it may not have made sense to kill 8,000 Palestinian children. The other thing I don't understand about it, and look, I have no problem with Jewish people. I don't like the Israeli government. I don't like I don't like the American government. Doesn't mean I don't like white people. It just means I don't like the government. And I think the other thing I think is that when you automatically cry anti-Semitism, because if I say I don't like the decisions the Israeli military is making, oh, anti-Semitic. So then am I anti-American if I don't like the American government? Because I would think that's the most American thing I can do, considering that America was founded on protesting the government. That was the entire point of America. And so I truly and honestly believe that we fundamentally are simply using this as an excuse. And if you just pull that card when somebody doesn't agree with you, it's not that that person's anti-Semitic, it's that you're a manipulator. And you just can't handle the fact that someone disagrees with you. You can't have the conversation, so you have to pull the race card. And that's the problem with today's society is you can't have a discussion. Because what if you did have a discussion? And what if you found, oh my gosh, there is something wrong here. And maybe if we corrected this, it would solve this problem. And if it solved this problem, maybe this would get better. But you can't even have the conversation because boom, anti-Semitic. And so that is, I believe, the root of the problem is we're not willing to have the conversation. If you don't automatically agree right from the get-go with one side, you're this horrible person. And look, I see it on the other side too. I've talked to some of my Muslim friends and I've said things like, you don't condone what Hamas did. They're like, they didn't do that. I said, well, something happened. I agree that it's convoluted what happened, but let's say it happened like they said that. You don't agree with that, right? So I do believe that both sides are very passionate about this and will use adolescent debate tactics to prove their point. However, I feel that only one side, the result is, I mean, I understand a lot of people died on October 7th, but now 100 times more have died. And at some point we have to say, look, you're causing people to forget about that day because what you're doing is so over the top that That's all we can focus on, because it's dead child after dead child after dead child. And I just think we need to not be proud of killing children, no matter what side or where.
Right. I have my own theory about this. I think that anytime the economy has been really rough, especially in the United States,
Mhm.
there's been some form of
Of
conflict in the
course.
Middle East.
Oh, yeah.
It, it's almost like they're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, our economy's going bad, we need some more oil right now.
Dude,
Like,
I'm not
let's
gonna
just
lie
go
to you.
there and
I'm
fuck
not
some shit
saying
up."
that this was false flag. I'm not saying that Hamas is made up. I'm not saying that Israel did this and it was fabricated. I'm not saying that. Is it possible? Anything's possible. But I will tell you this. Economy sucks. Biden and his family are warmongers. Most presidents are. And you're right. Most wars are done to make money. So I believe this war happened as a reason to make money, whether it was planned or whether something happened and they just said, "Oh, let's use that." Right? Let's use that. Like maybe something happened and they just said, "Oh, this is an excuse." But if you go back 15 years, you'll find videos of Netanyahu talking about how America is so easy to manipulate and to get them to support a war. So if a man says that and then he goes to war and doesn't want a ceasefire and does all these things, you're telling me that I don't have a case, I don't have an argument here to say maybe not the whole thing's BS, maybe it is, but there's a lot of BS in here. If the guy literally said, "Hey, I like and I can easily manipulate the world to support a war," like, you
Mm,
don't think, like, the guy said it on camera. So why am I the asshole? You know what I'm saying? Like, that said, I have lots of Jewish friends who do not support uh, what the Israeli government is doing, but I have lots of Israeli friends that do. And the thing is, I
wow.
just don't agree with them. I don't hate them,
Did you
but
get
I
a
don't
lot?
agree with them.
Did you get a lot of pushback when you started posting stories about this? Like people actually messaging you and be like, "Yo, you're wrong."
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But the truth is that if I die tomorrow and I've got 30 seconds before I go, I don't want to think to myself, I don't want people to not like me, so I'm not going to speak up about this. I want to
Mm,
know that I did what I felt was right. And think about this. Think about how crazy life is right now. You say a man is a man and not a woman, you're a nutbag. You say that a child should be able to choose their gender because they had a bad day at 5 years old. If you don't agree with that, you're a lunatic, right? If you say, "Hey, we should stop bombing and killing thousands of children in Palestine, especially when the UN has a literal resolution that says if you know civilians are in an area and you bomb it anyway, that is against this resolution. You are considered a war criminal." And Israel has openly admitted on television that they said evacuate, but we know you're there, and they bombed them anyway, which according to the UN makes you a war criminal, yet we don't call them war criminals, yet we don't at least question it. And if we do question it, we're anti-Semitic. That is equally as lunatic and crazy as the blue hair and the genders and the cutting off of 5-year-olds, And so, honestly, I'm not surprised.
right. I think one thing I thought about as well is that during this time, and I was talking to my friend about this too. I was like, there is no actual democracy. Like these people just want you to be the majority to be on their side, because a lot of people, especially with what's going on, are starting to protest, and social media has brought this awareness to the problem. But the governments don't care. They just
No.
want the majority of people who are ignorant to the situation to support them so that they can go and bomb the shit out of people and get some oil. Because I was talking to my girlfriend and she's like, I don't know anything about it. I'm sure both sides are messed up. I don't even care. And I
Well, I would agree that
realized
both
that,
sides are messed up. That I'll agree with.
yeah, I agree with it, but I realize most people, they just don't care to look into the situation too much as long as they're not personally affected by it.
That's
And
human nature.
that's where the problem lies, because then, they can just kind of do whatever they want. I'm sure we can go deep into this for a long talk, but I wanted to switch things over. What do you think about, because you talked about Biden, but what do you think about the other sides of the perspective like Trump. Do you think he's just another puppet, or was he actually like a really good president?
Um, I try not to concern myself too much with American politics because I kind of opted out of the American system. I live in Costa Rica most of the time. I don't have health insurance. I don't believe in insurance. It's all a scam. So I try to opt out of the Western American uh, mindset. And so I
Mm,
will say this: if you put a gun to my head and you said Biden or Trump, I would choose Trump. I wouldn't wave a MAGA flag and dance around, but I would choose him because I honestly believe that certain things that happened, like the Israeli conflict and the Russian conflict, wouldn't have happened under Trump. Now, could Trump be, is Trump, does he say things that are unkind? Yes. Uh, are his policies bad? I'm sure some of them are not great. I think on paper he did a lot of great things. But almost every president has done some good things on paper. But at the end of the day, if you boil it down to who makes us the most prosperous and who makes us the most safe, and you forget about everything else, you forget about the blue hairs and the genders and all that, and you say, who's going to keep us safe? Who's going to keep us prosperous? I just think whether he's an asshole or not, Trump has a better plan for keeping us safe for sure. Trump's kind of like that wacko on the subway who, like, you're thinking about fighting him, but he's like crazy, and you're like, I don't want to fight a crazy guy. He can do anything, right? So Russia's like, oh, that guy's crazy. I'm not going to do anything. So it's like, I don't care how he got the job done. He got the job done. And as soon as Biden went in, the second Biden went in, Russia started building up forces around the Ukraine, knowing that Biden was a pushover. And that's why that happened. It never would have happened under Trump because Trump's the crazy subway guy. So I don't care why he got the job done. He got the job done. Most people vote based on if they like the person's tie or their dialect. I don't care. Trump could say whatever he wants. I do not care because at the end of the day, I want to be safe and I want to be prosperous, and I care more about that than whether or not he has decorum. My perception of his decorum ranks here, and my wanting my family to be prosperous and safe is here. And if you have
mm,
any sense at all, you would value that more than your perception of someone's decorum. So,
mm.
because if you go 200, 300, 400 years, every ruler was like, looked like Conan the Barbarian, and they're like, "Arr!" Right? So where's the decorum there? Just forget about it. You're always going to have bad choices. They're always going to suck. And the other thing is, guys, like, think about this. There's a clip of Biden. He goes to a factory. The factory worker comes up and says, um, says, hey, why do you want to ban guns? And Biden says to him, you want to step outside, man? Literally challenge a voter to a physical fight. When has Trump ever done that? You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying I support Trump, but the whole narrative is BS because I would think that is far less decorum of a president than just calling Rosie O'Donnell fat, you know?
Right,
I mean, he
right.
challenged him to a physical altercation. That is way worse, but we don't
Which
care.
he would most likely lose. I mean, he would definitely lose that. The dude can hardly walk.
Biden? Oh yeah. Yeah, the guy was probably in his 30s. He'd have got smoked. Yeah.
Why'd you move to Costa Rica out of all places on the planet?
Uh better food, way better medical, better quality of life, perfect weather, beautiful country, less blue hair people. Um uh People are kind and care about you. They don't argue about stupid things constantly.
Mm,
Less ignorance than America. And that's a big one. I care about quality of life. I care about quality of food. I care about all those things. And dude, a 5-star restaurant in the United States doesn't even compare to the worst shack in Costa Rica.
wow.
So, plus Costa Rica is considered a blue zone. Most people don't have, there's not a lot of cancer there because they don't allow the crap that we have in America here. And honestly, I just don't want to play the game anymore. This American game of it's your money or your life. We're going to keep you down and press you down. I have a Tesla. I accidentally scraped it on a parking lot that was really tight that had columns. They tripled my insurance. I
Wow.
should have just paid for the friggin' body work. And I'm sorry, but the game is rigged here. The game is rigged. It's Costa Rica is a poor country, but the game isn't rigged. So you actually can win there, especially if you work on the internet.
Mm.
And that's why so many people are flocking to Dubai, Costa Rica, Bali, because they're waking up and realizing that the game in America is rigged. And I don't want to play an unfair game anymore. I can win at the unfair game, but because I learned the rules of the game, but it's exhausting and I just don't want to play it anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've talked about this many times, especially with Canada. Like they'll take more than half of your income. Like
Yeah.
it's insane the amount of money that they take away from you and give you so little.
Dubai takes none.
Yeah. Yeah, they just let you have it. Going back to when you said that you had this girlfriend who was telling you that you're never going to amount to nothing.
That was several girlfriends.
Several girlfriends who might have said that. How do you find the right partner who's going to support you on the journey to make sure that you have the highest chances of
As a
success?
man?
As a man.
Okay, so here's the deal. This will piss a lot of people off, but men are all very similar, okay? We want respect. We want a woman to respect us, right? So right off the bat, most westernized women are programmed. It's not their fault. They're just programmed to not respect a man. We have what's toxic feminism today. So most men are not going to find a woman that respects them in the Western world because they just very rarely exist, at least compared to like the Middle East or another part of the world. But most men want respect. They also want some level of purity. Most men will go after the shiny object, the woman who has her boobs hanging out, her butt hanging out. Maybe she's got some plastic going on. Why? Because it looks good. It's shiny. And we get a dopamine hit. But we never marry those women. Or if we do, we're complete tools. And the reason we don't marry those women is because value is determined by rarity. And that's in anything, right? The most valuable things in life are rare, which is why the most valuable thing in life, do you know what it is?
The things that are rare? No. What is it?
It's time. Because time is the single most rarest thing on the planet because when it's gone, it's gone. If I offered to wire you $1 million right now, would you say yes?
Yeah.
But what if you couldn't wake up tomorrow?
No, of course
not. Right. Well, what if it was 10 million?
But I couldn't wake up tomorrow?
Right.
Well, there's no amount of money.
Right, 100 billion, which means what you're telling me is time is infinitely more valuable than money. Why? Because time is the most rarest thing because when it's gone, it's gone. So if a woman makes herself available, and this is just my perspective, if a woman makes herself available to anyone, whether that be sexually, whether that be visually, if she's got an Instagram where any man can see most of her, well, then she's not that rare. And so the perceived value is much lower, which means we might hang out with you, but we're not going to marry you. We're not going to commit to you. And we have these women running around. And look, here's the deal. If you looked like a prostitute 50 years ago, you still look like a prostitute. It's just that all your friends look like prostitutes, so they're not there to judge you anymore.
Right.
All right? So if you look like that, then we're inherently not going to value you because there's no rarity there, which is why I know so many rich guys who, if they have any self-confidence at all, they will date a ton of shiny women, but they settle down with the more reserved women. They settle down with the more conservative woman. Because when it comes time to have a family, when it comes time to carry on your legacy, when it comes time to say, this is the one I want to grow old with, we want rarity. That's what we want. That's what we consider as value. That's what everything is considered as value. Every market, every business, every aspect of life, the things that are more rare are more valuable. And so we want women who are rare. We want women who are only for us. You can't change that. That is an inherent fundamental thing. And the problem is today, most women they don't agree with what we want. They want us to want what they want us to want instead of just giving us what we want. If you go to Aruba and you open a sweater shop, Nobody's going to buy because nobody needs a frickin' sweater in Aruba. What are you going to do? Stand out on the corner and be like, you guys are all sucked. You're all misogynist. You're all bigots because you don't want a sweater. Is that going to sell more sweaters? No, you're going to die alone with 7 cats in your 1-bedroom apartment and no husband. At the end of the day, the market wants what the market wants. Men do not want women who toss their sexuality around. At least they don't want to marry them. So if you want a husband, you need to be the product the market wants. And I know business and marriage aren't the same thing, but psychologically they are. We want what we want. So give us what we want or we're not marrying you. Period.
Right.
So my suggestion is, for a man, don't settle. Find the woman. If you got to go outside of the United States, if you got to go, I don't care. My wife is from Turkey. Okay? I don't care where you got to go. Do not settle and do not succumb to your friggin' dopamine addiction and go after the woman who's a shiny object, who is toxic, who is going to go out and hang out with a bunch of dudes and party while you're at home. Like, don't do it to yourself just because you want status, just because you want a girl with a nice chest to be walking next to you so you look good to your friends. Guess what? The only friends you look good to are the other ones that don't have any self-confidence. The real men, the men with true worth, they look at you like a boy. They look at you knowing that you succumbed to your addiction to dopamine because you wanted to look at a pair of titties every single day. And those are nice. But when you are old and you realize, and look, I'm not saying there's no conservative women with nice features. I'm not saying that. But if they're out for everybody to see, I highly doubt you're going to grow old and feel fulfilled. And if you do, more power to you. But generally, the things that are more rare are more valuable.
Yeah. So now we know how to find a good woman. Respect, rarity.
If they're rare, women who give you respect are rare. So.
Right. In and of itself.
Yes.
But then also the rarity that they're not sexually as open and available and kind of following the Western culture.
The thing that'll allow you to find a good woman as a man is not being insecure. An insecure man will marry a low quality woman because she looks good and she gives him a dopamine hit. A secure man will realize that that is not the woman for him, and he will let her go, and he will search, and he will find a woman who he finds attractive, who gives him respect, and who is just for him and is rare and doesn't throw her sexuality around, isn't an alcoholic, isn't a party girl. And that's having respect for yourself as a man, is saying no to those things that feel so good but will ruin your life.
If you were to give one advice when it comes to having a happy marriage, or at least a long marriage or a successful marriage, what would that one piece of advice be?
Oh, that's a great question. As someone who was married for 5 years, got divorced, was single and had girlfriends for 5 years, and then remarried my wife, and has been through all that, I will say this: you can't just get married and you have to have some set of rules for marriage. There has to be a construct, okay? Now, for some, maybe that's religion. One thing I've always respected about Islam was they have a very, very detailed set of rules and a plan for marriage. Whereas other religions, and I have some Christian friends, if I say, hey, like, what are you supposed to do in marriage? They're kind of like, well, you know. But if I ask a Muslim, they're like, boom. And that's what I've always respected about them. And what's funny is most of the couples I know that are happy are people who, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity, whether it's something else, they stick collectively to the rules. And when they deviate from the rules, they get back to them. They don't just freestyle it. There's an old saying, amateurs wing it, professionals prepare. And I think you need to prepare for a good marriage. And a note on Islam, because I know a lot of people listening might be like, wow, they're horrible to women. You have to think about the perspective, right? In Islam, is a woman supposed to take care of the man? Yes. Is she supposed to be sexually available to the man? Yes. She's not even supposed to leave the house without the man's permission. These are all actual rules. But a man is also supposed to provide for a woman. She's not supposed to work. She's not supposed to have to work. And I've met Muslim women who will say that they have more rights than an American woman because they say, I have the right to not have to work. American women have to work. I don't have to work. So see, it's perspective, right? Just like in Dubai, I believe Dubai is more free than the United States. And you might say, oh, how is that possible? Well, think about it. Think about it. If I go out on a Saturday night in the United States, I have a very high chance of getting assaulted. My wife has a extremely high chance of getting assaulted, shot, stabbed, etc. You go to Dubai, there is zero chance. You can leave a Rolex out on a table, walk away for 2 hours, come back, the Rolex is still there because there's zero crime. Well, yeah, but Dan, if you get drunk and you scream in the streets, they'll throw you in jail for 6 months. Well, why would you get drunk and scream in the streets why would you do that? So what you're saying is you don't like Dubai because you can't be an asshole there. That's why I want to go there, because there's no asshole. So to me, I have the freedom in Dubai or countries like it to walk down the street safely. I have the freedom to know my wife can go out and not get assaulted. I have the freedom to know that I can send my kid to school and he's not going to have a bad day and someone's going to tell him he's a girl. I have those freedoms. And so freedom is what you make of it. Freedom is perspective. So if you decide what freedom means for you, then maybe the United States is right up your alley, or maybe it's somewhere else. Because freedom isn't just freedom. Freedom is what you decide it is. And to me, at this point, I believe places like Dubai are more free than the United States because I have the freedom to be safe, I have the freedom to not be taxed to death, and I have the freedom that my child is not going to be indoctrinated. So that's free to me.
Wow. Freedom is more disciplined and structured than most people think it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's the result of that. You get more freedom as the result of that, and I will give up my right to scream like a banshee while drunk, falling over chairs in the streets because I don't need that right to be in a safe place. You see what I'm saying? I don't need the right to be an asshole. If you need that right, head on over to the United States of America.
So let's switch over back to business. If you were starting your business today from scratch, zero, what would the first week look like? How would you go about it?
I truly believe that, especially if you have no experience in business, that the best way to grow a business from scratch is to create a business that helps other businesses. Why? Because a business is the best customer because it's a customer that has to buy. See, every business has to buy from other businesses to stay in business. They have to. When I owned a restaurant, I had to hire somebody to come and clean the hood vents or my restaurant would burn down, and it was legally required. I had to have somebody come and restock my liquor and my beer. And by the way, I don't drink anymore. I don't condone drinking. This was 15 years ago. But I had to have somebody work, be a waitress. I had to have somebody come in and check the fire alarms. I had to do all these things to stay in business or I wouldn't be in business. And so businesses are the best customers because they have to buy. There's no question. They have to buy. And every business all has the same problem. They need more customers. Every business needs more customers. So if you can figure out a way to get a business more customers, you have a business and it's highly likely that it'll be successful. Now, there's 1,000 different ways to get customers for businesses. Pick the one. So my first week, I'd sit down and I'd ask myself, what business do I want to help? And what way to get them more customers is the most up my alley? What do I have the most skills and tools, or can I obtain the skills and tools to do immediately? And then I would go out and I would use that tool to get a business a customer for free in exchange for a case study. I would then do it. I would take that case study and I'd market it to other businesses and I'd say, look what I did for this person. I can do it for you. And then I would charge them. And you might say, well, Dan, that's working for free. No, it's not. You're working for an asset. You're working for an asset that will make you more money. And so that is what I would do. That's exactly what I would do.
I love that. That's awesome. As we enter close to the end of this episode, what I like to do is do some rapid fire questions. First thing that just pops in your head. And we'll go through them one at a time. So what are 3 traits or words that your friends would use to describe you?
Intense, focused, and probably relentless.
I love that. What are 3 traits that you feel like you're missing or you need to work on more?
Focus. Because I don't hold myself to their standard. I hold myself to my standard. I would say patience, for definitely patience. And probably kindness, because I'm a very blunt person, and most of the time it works, but there's times when I look back and I go, I could have been kinder. Like I could have said that better. Sometimes you need the harshness, but I think sometimes I miss the mark and I could be kinder.
What is your greatest fear?
Greatest fear is in like getting eaten by a shark with laser beams attached to their eyes, or what?
It could be.
I would say my greatest fear is having someone die that I care about without properly expressing to them how I feel or resolving conflict.
Wow. What's the best book you've ever read?
Oh man, so many good books. That's a great question.
If you could only, I guess the better question is, if you could only pick one book, and that's the only book that you had knowledge from, all of the other books you no longer have the knowledge from, what would that one
for
book
business?
be? It could be for anything. Business, life, whatever. Just one.
Oh man. You're killing me. I'll give you my second one. I want to give you a good one. I'd probably change my mind 10 seconds after I give it to you. I'll be honest with you. I would say, honestly, Magnetic Story Selling by Dan Kennedy. Because your ability to communicate is the thing that will help you in life the most. And that book, and now that's a $2,000 book. I want to be transparent. That book costs $2,000. But if you gave me one book, that would be it. Because if you can't make money reading that book as a communicator, well, you should work at McDonald's, because that book makes it insanely easy. That book.
Magnetic Storytelling. What's the one quote?
Magnetic Story Selling. Sorry, Magnetic Story Selling.
What's the one quote or best quote that you live by?
Stephen Hawking. The greatest enemy to knowledge is not ignorance. It is, well, Lord, I live by it. I forget the rest of the quote. Hold on. Yes, that's it. It's Stephen Hawking. The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance. It is the illusion of knowledge. It's not what you don't know. It's what you think you know.
Interesting. Okay. It's the illusion of knowledge. It's not what you don't know. It's what you think you know.
Yes, because most people, look, a lot of our pain comes from things we don't know. For instance, one time I came home from the gym and there was a big carafe of almond milk on the kitchen counter. And I know it was almond milk because I don't drink dairy, and I drink 2 to 3 protein shakes a day. I love almond milk protein shakes. So I asked my wife, I say, what's with the big jug of almond milk? And she looks at me and she goes, and she walks over to the fridge and she flings open the door and she grabs one of our store-bought cartons of almond milk. She says, "You know what this is?" I said, "Almond milk?" And she goes, "Yeah. And do you know how many toxins are in it, and plastics and gum that are probably giving you cancer?" I was like, "No." And she's like, "A lot. Look at all these. Do you know how much this cost?" I went, $6. She's like, "Yeah. She's like, do you know how much you spend on almond milk a month? I'm like, no. She's like, almost $200. And you're ingesting all these horrible things. I went, okay. So she walks over to the big carafe, the big jug of almond milk. She goes, you know what this is? And I went, almond milk? And she goes, yeah, homemade almond milk. Do you know what this is? And she holds up this black contraption. She says, this is an almond milk maker. It costs $50 on Amazon. It takes a little palm of almonds. You put it in, it's pure almonds and water. It makes a jug of almond milk twice the size of your carton. And there's no plastics in it. And I did some quick mental math in my head, and I realized that the jug or the carton of almond milk from the store costs $6, and the equal amount of homemade almond milk cost about 20 cents. So basically nothing. And in that moment, I realized that not only was she right, but I was wasting $200 a month on almond milk and ingesting all these horrible things that I didn't need to ingest, and a lot of it, for one simple reason. I simply did not know you could make homemade almond milk. And it's the things we do not know that cost us the most. If you do not know how to grow your business, it costs you millions. If you do not know how to create a business, it costs you millions. If you don't know how to resolve conflict with your father and he dies, it costs you a lifetime of sadness. However, there's only one thing worse than ignorance and not knowing things. It's thinking you know them when you don't, because then you never look for the solution. Then you never look for the knowledge because you think you already know it and it's wrong. And so when you know something, you should consistently seek to understand it at a greater level. A lot of people who have followed me in the business space would say I am one of the best pitchmen. I'm one of the people who can create the most amazing marketing and pitches for a variety of projects, like off the top of my head. And the truth is that I think I suck. And I spend every day trying to understand how to use words to persuade at a higher level. And the truth is, if you think you are a hard worker, you are probably one of the most laziest people in your circle. Because what makes a hard worker is not thinking you're a hard worker. If you think you're lazy, you're probably a hard worker. If you think you're a hard worker, you're probably lazy. That's what makes hard workers, and that's what makes lazy people. It's the perception that they are the opposite.
I love that. Was that a money tale right there?
Yes, that's exactly what that was.
That was a money. I'm like listening to it. I'm like, sounds like a money
Yeah,
tale.
it was. Yeah, that's something I teach. See, but I still think I suck. I still think I could have said that 10,000 times better, and that's why I'm good.
One animal you would pick as your spirit animal.
I'm not fruity like that, so I don't know.
If you were to
I don't
be
do spirits
reincarnated into an animal, if you were to be reincarnated into an animal that wasn't human, hypothetically,
I don't believe in reincarnation.
Hypothetically,
fuck, man. Well, I'd have to have a purpose. So I would say, all right, probably some sort of sea animal, because I've spent my life on land. I'd like to explore the sea. So whatever the longest living sea animal is, which is probably like a shark or a whale or something like that. But if you're just going based on if you're going based purely on aesthetics, I don't know, a lion or some lame shit like that.
if you were to have one superpower, what would it be?
Ooh. If I had one superpower, it would be able to see the results of my actions before I took them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would be a great superpower. I think I just changed I used to have like the most basic answers, like flying, being invisible, but that right there is it.
It's like, dude, you could go back in time without ever going back in time.
You could go back in time without ever going back and like just seeing it?
Because if you say I'm going to do this thing, but I know what'll happen if I do it, you could change your mind, and
Mm,
then you see what happens there, and you go, oh, that's better, and you do that, right? Because what's the end result of going back in a time, correcting a poor decision? But if you can see the result of the decision
right.
first, then you don't need to go back in time.
That's an amazing superpower.
Yeah. Then you
That's
don't need to
that's
mess up,
that's my answer for
create
now.
parallel universes and stuff. You can avoid that.
Right. Dude, Dan, thank you so much for hopping on, man. I'm going to leave all of your links down below. Of course, anybody who wants to check them out, I would suggest even watching this podcast again. So much gold in this. If people want to know more about you, they want to know more about what you do, they want to buy your products, whatever that may be, a book, Money Tales, which I just bought myself. Like, I'm going to go through it really, really quickly. And I just saw you do a Money Tales, so I know that this clearly works. Where can they find out more about you?
Well, you can buy my products at getclients.com. You can check out Get Clients University. But for my content, my YouTube channel is fire. I do free coaching calls for entrepreneurs, and I fix their businesses. I save small businesses one company at a time on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Dan Henry. And I also shake it up on Instagram at Dan Henry.
I love that. Guys, go check them out. Dan, thank you so much for hopping on. We'll stay on for a quick minute after this. But again, everybody, links down below. And thank you for hopping on, man.
Thanks, man.